Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Fell in Love with Female Izuku Midoriya Part 1. Before we start, please go support Anthony Tyler 9 for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. Issei's perspective. Issei would wake up today thinking that it would be a great day. It hadn't been a great year for those within the class 2E, as he had been peeping on the kendo club all the time since he first applied to the school. He had his best friends Mitsuda and Motohama with him, as they were also in the school with him. He would never leave his bros alone, it was his very own bro code, never leave another bro in the dark of anything that happens. No matter what happens. Sigh, I really want to know why I continue to be a pervert. It never helps me getting any girls. I know that I want to express myself in front of others, but it's kind of hard to do that when all the girls hate me for it, Issei said, sighing heavily. Leaving his room to take a shower, he was washing up as his mother went up the stairs calling his name. Issei-chan, I made breakfast, you better be awake, Issei's mother Miki Hyoudou said, as Issei called out from the bathroom. Washing up, mom, just give me a few minutes, he called out, getting a response of don't take too long from her. Finishing himself off in the shower, he leaves and gets his school clothes on as he wishes that something good can happen this month. It had been getting boring for him and his friends lately, since the girls had been getting smarter with how they find out how the trio had been peeping on them. Walking down the stairs, he enters the kitchen to see his parents talking to one another as they complained in front of him about him being too perverted. I'm seriously having second doubts about coming out as a pervert, Issei blurted out, stunning his parents. Wait, I thought you enjoyed showing everyone that? Goro asked, now serious. I am serious when I do that, but all I do is get beaten up for it. I am a growing boy and I just want to show people who I am and that I am not afraid to do it. It just is becoming too much for me to handle. I think I should just get rid of all my porn, Issei grumbled. Tuckling at her son, Miki hugs her son, telling him that they don't mean to talk bad about him, she is just glad that he is seeing how bad it is. Mom, I am a pervert through and through. I just don't understand why I can't express it in front of others and they think I'm a villainous bastard because of it, Issei said, eating some eggs. Well, maybe you should stop peeping on those kendo girls. Goro asked curiously to how his son would react to that. Dad, when I peeped on them, you'd think that they would cover every part that leads to where boys can peep on them. But they don't ever do it, like do they do not understand to look everywhere for openings for boys to peep? Issei asked. Well, maybe talk this up with the school's principal, maybe they can help you with your problem. Miki asked, as Issei nodded his head. Issei was walking towards school with his buddies Mitsuda and Motohama. One had glasses on his head and was shorter than the other two, whilst the other was bald, as well as had an athletic body for track and field. These two were Mitsuda and Motohama, Issei's friends, as well as perverted buddies that he trusts with his life. With him thinking about his future, he starts to think about everything that he's done with them, as they always ditch him to take the punishment of the girls. Sighing in annoyance, he just continues on his day as he decided to just not be perverted for a day, making the school think that Issei's personality was becoming a complete 180 since he wasn't perving out. We soon find Issei walking towards the principal's office as he was going to talk to them about the problem with the kendo club. Entering the office, he closes the door, only to be met with a tall woman with large breasts who had brown hair and violet eyes. Hello Hyoudou-kun, how can I assist you today? The principal asked. This is Gremory, I would like to make an opinion about the kendo club and their treatment of me, Issei said, sighing. Oh? And what might be the issue? Mrs. Gremory asked, curious. Well, you know how my buddies and I keep peeping on them? Issei asked, as he gained a nod in return. Well, why don't they ever take care of the peephole that we make every time and allow us to continue going to that one spot? It makes me think that they seriously like being peeped on by us specifically, Issei said, looking at the ground. I can see what you're talking about. Can you tell me what happened to make you think this? She asked as she watched his body language for any lies. I've been thinking this morning about why I even showcase my love of breasts to the world when all I get is beaten up for it and left behind by my buddies to take the punishment for them. And I have been seriously considering dropping the perverted act that I have, Issei said, looking at the woman in front of him. The perverted Issei of the perverted trio is all an act? Mrs. Gremory asked, surprised. Yes, I've been alone for most of my life. And my only true friend moved away from here about 10 years ago. I truly have nobody who genuinely cares for me besides my parents, and even then they still complain about me every morning, Issei said, looking out the window. I can see what is wrong here, you're feeling completely bummed out about why you can't get a girl to like you, she said, as Issei nodded. What are you planning on doing to make sure that you can get some of the girls to like you? She asked. I've been planning on getting rid of my porn stash at home. Not only that, but I haven't perved out today at all. All I want is to be acknowledged as well as at least make a girlfriend, other than that I want to just show them the real me. The me that doesn't leer at them lecherously, the me that will take care of them should they ask me. The me that I really want to show them, the pure kind-hearted young man who just wants a true friend again. Issei said, not realizing his eyes were watering. Well, continue on your journey in order to save yourself from your perverted self. Don't keep that version of you locked away though, it might get out and do something bad. Mrs. Gremory said, smiling at Issei. She really was glad that he was seeing the error of his ways and showing her that he could be saved mentally from the perverted antics that she had grown to love. Leaving the office, Issei walks back to class unknown to any and all people in Kuo Town. A portal appeared above the town near the park within the town. Issei had gone through his classes of the day with a gusto that the women of the school never even saw before. Sure, he was bored by some of the classes since he was somewhat of a moron, but he really enjoyed the classes when he paid attention to them. Issei would leave his class and head over to the courtyard as he was thinking about his life up until this point in his life as a virgin perverted hormonal boy. He was entering his last class of the day when he overheard some of the girls of the classroom talking about some kind of hole in the sky over Kuo Park. Did you hear about that weird circle in the sky? One girl asked, curiously. I know, I heard about that as well. You think it will be a storm over there tonight? Another girl asked, as Issei just sat down in his seat. Alright class, we will be having a math test for you all. I hope you all are prepared for it, the teacher said, happily. Issei couldn't help but smile seeing his teacher's smile on her face. It was really like her to make these surprise tests for them on a daily basis. As he paid attention to the class, the teacher as well as the others noticed his smile on his face as he listened to the teacher. You think that Hyoudou will actually do something good this time? One girl asked, as Issei noticeably frowned. Don't worry about him, he will be back to perving out by tomorrow. I just know it. Another girl said, slandering him. The class continued on as Issei was slowly getting annoyed with every rumor going on about him as they started to annoy him with how many there was. Eventually it became too much for both him and the teacher as he literally stood up at the same time as the teacher with the teacher about to speak when Issei literally screamed. Will you just shut the buck up? I don't want to hear you bitches talking shit about me through whispers that I can hear. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Just ask me why I am acting this way. Issei yelled as he left the classroom, slamming the door behind himself. Hold on class, I need to get him back. Think about what happened as your punishment. She said, leaving the room. Issei was sitting underneath a tree with cherry blossoms on it as he was currently trying to calm down from what had happened in class. So this is where you are. I never thought you'd like this specific tree. The teacher said. Hey Mrs. Nakamura. Issei said, grunting. Wanna tell me why you screamed at your classmates, Hyoudou-kun? She asked as she placed a hand on his back. The one time I actually want to look like a normal person, they all think that I am just going to be the same tomorrow and not to worry about me. I know that I am a hopeless pervert that will never get a girlfriend in the future, but they seriously don't need to rub it in. Issei growled out, the growl sounded draconic in nature. Well, how about you tell me what is going on in your head? I might be able to tell you what I think about it. Nakamura said. I've been thinking since this morning about why I make myself the enemy of all women when I act perverted. I know that it isn't okay for me to do, but that is literally my last line of defense in order to protect myself. The last person that I really liked moved away, so I couldn't grow up with them. I miss her so much. I thought she was a boy when I was younger, but after thinking about it this morning I was really stupid. Issei said as the teacher watched many emotions flash over his face in many ways. First was sadness as if he lost someone close to him who he truly thought was someone he loved, then it was anger for them having to leave as well as everything that happens here, and finally disgust and disappointment in himself as he hates that he needs to act like a pervert to even get two friends who are on the same wavelength. I'm sorry that you feel that way. Well, there is always fish out in the sea if you wanted a girlfriend. Maybe you'll find one soon. Nakamura asked, looking into Issei's eyes. That won't happen, Mrs. Nakamura. Nobody would like a perverted boy who just stares at a woman's breasts. Which is what I've been doing this whole time. Issei admits as Nakamura sighed. You really like breasts, don't you? She asked. Yeah, an old man told me about the wonderful abilities they have to just draw any man in as well as make them know their power of their mind. Issei said, chuckling. A woman's body can be used to ensnare a man in order to make him her prey. Just know that they can make your life ended with just one word. Nakamura said as she stared at Issei. Rape? Issei asked monotonously. How did you know? Nakamura asked. It's already been said for me, have to register as a hex offender when I did nothing wrong. I took the fall for Motohama as he was the one who did it and blamed me for it. Issei said, sighing. Well, I hope that you can be freed from your mistake. Nakamura said, getting up from the ground as the sky turned a little darker. Well, class is almost over, would you like to return? Nakamura asked, placing her hand in front of him. Grabbing her hand to get up as he followed her to the classroom, entering the room. The class was now quiet as he walked over to his desk and grabbed his things and placed them in his backpack. Sitting at his desk, he sleeps until the end of the class as the bell rings to wake him up from his slumber. Getting up to leave, he moves out of the courtyard as he begins to walk home. "Hey Issei, you haven't been talking to us today, what happened?" Motohama asked, concerned. "Remember what happened in middle school?" Issei asked. "Can't say that I do." Motohama said, looking at the sky in a thinking pose. "I took the blame for you sexually assaulting a girl in middle school. And now because of your mistake that I took the blame for you, by the way, I have to be registered as a hex offender." Issei said, a little venom coming out of his mouth. "Issei, I already told you that I was sorry about that," Motohama said, a little angered about that. "Motohama, I have trusted you and Mitsuda for the entire time that we have been in middle school and high school. But with what happened in middle school and me thinking my life choices, I have decided that we should probably never talk to one another again," Issei said, as he then turned to Mitsuda. "Mitsuda, I hope you aren't mad with me when I say the same thing to you," Issei said as Mitsuda nodded his head. "Don't worry bud, we know how bad it is for you. If you don't want to be our friend anymore, then that is fine with me," Mitsuda said, smiling at Issei. Why you can't just leave us like this, we're the perverted trio," Motohama called out, angrily. "Motohama, I've taken the blame for both you and Mitsuda getting beaten by the kendo club on a daily basis. I just don't want to be a pervert out in the open anymore," Issei said, walking towards the Kuo Town's park. So the perverted trio had been reduced to a duo. Issei entered the park with an empty mind as he was walking over to sit down at the park's bench. Finding a spot to sit down at, he looked at the sky as he thought about his life until that point. Never really noticing a green blip pop out of the circle in the sky. Why does this world just hate me so much? I never really did anything wrong, all I did was defend my perverted friends and I just joined them out of pressure," Issei said, sighing. He looked around the park as he watched the families walking about with smiles on their faces as they talked to their kids. The families had left the area when Issei had looked back towards the sky again as he noticed something moving in the sky right towards his location. Squinting his eyes in order to see what it was, he saw something green falling from the sky, thinking it was just a leaf when he noticed the arms and legs on the leaf. "Wait, is that a person?" Issei asked as the person landed in the Kuo Park fountain. As a dust cloud was formed around the fountain, Issei covered his eyes as he moved closer to it in order to find out what the hell happened. Looking back at the sky, he found that the circle in the sky disappeared and he ran towards the now cratered fountain. As he arrived at the crater, he looked inside and was absolutely stunned by the beauty of the girl that was unconscious in the crater. She had beautiful curly green hair as well as bruises on her upper arms, as well as scars there too. What made her such a turn on for Issei was her large breasts as well as the freckles on each cheek of her face. He walked closer to the girl as he noticed that she was bleeding from her left leg as well as her face. As he tore off his shirt and placed it on her left ankle, he then looked at his area and found some clothing for her as he covered her chest. He then noticed that her eyes were dulled out as she looked around. And that is when he overheard her speak. "Ieri-chan, where are you?" the girl said, passing out to her injuries. "What the buck?" Issei asked, confused and concerned. Izumi's perspective, it was supposed to be a simple raid, and a simple raid it was as Izumi, otherwise known as the provisional Heroine Deku, had launched her attack on the Shai Hassaikai Yakuza base with her work study under Sir Nidai. The man having a quirk that allows him to see the future of someone he touches once a day, we were capable of finding the base where Ieri-chan was at. Ieri-chan was a little girl who had a horn on her head, silver blue hair and ruby red eyes that were big in size. She had bandages on her arms and legs, as well as a dirty gown, as well as in her eyes were fear. After hearing about what happens to her whenever she is experimented on made me sick as well as blame myself for not acting sooner when I ran into her. She was just a little girl, and these men were abusing her as well as experimenting on her quirk and body. I will not stand for this, call these motherly instincts if you want, but I will not allow this to continue any further. We arrived outside the Yakuza base early in the morning for the raid. I can't believe that we're taking this long to do the raid. But just as we were about to start the raid, a large man with a bird mask ran through the front door as he blows up the entrance, causing all heroes to attack. While Ryukyu, Najire-chan, Uravity-chan were fighting him, me, Eraserhead-san, Rock Lock, Fatgum, Suneater, Lemillion, Sir Nidai, and many police officers ran inside the base in order to save Ieri-chan. We were deep inside the base when Sir Nidai told Mirio-senpai to go on ahead and slow down the leaders of the Yakuza. Nodding, he went on ahead as I kicked the wall blocking us down. "Go ahead, problem child, I will handle these villains with Rock Lock," Eraserhead-san said as I ran off ahead of the group with Sir Nidai not far behind. When I arrived in the area, I found Mirio-senpai locked in battle with Chisaki Kai, or known in the underworld as Overhaul. He and Senpai were locked into a big battle, and I noticed that one of the henchmen was aiming a gun at Ieri-chan, so I ran over to the guy and knocked him out immediately and broke his gun with his bullets. After doing that, I managed to get Ieri-chan to leave the area and took her to Sir Nidai as he just arrived on the scene. Giving her to him, I ran off to help my senpai in order to defeat Overhaul. Midoriya sir called out, looking back I stared at him. You are a good successor to All Might. Help Mirio defeat Overhaul he said, with pride, smiling I nodded my head and took off. I made it back to the arena as Lemillion had been fighting the villain for a while now and both individuals were panting heavily. I made my entrance by landing behind the villain and kicking him towards Mirio senpai as he kicked the man to the ground before disappearing. I then kept all sight of Chisaki on me in order to keep him from finding out how to counter Mirio senpai. The fight was going great until he managed to deform one of his subordinates and gained the advantage against me and Mirio senpai. I had injured my left ankle as well as Mirio senpai, taking some damage to his left hip. We had pushed the villain to the surface as Ryukyu had landed in the underground arena with their villain knocked out. With her assisting us with the defeat of Overhaul, it wouldn't be long before he was defeated and taken to prison within Tartarus. But something happened during the fight as he was able to take the body of the knocked out villain from Ryukyu and he became a giant monster that defeated everyone aside from me. He was about to take Eri-chan away again and I wrapped her around my back with Mirio senpai's cape and Eri-chan began to use her quirk allowing me to use my quirk at 100% power where it was breaking my arms and legs pretty much everything and she was rewinding me back to before that happened. We fought the massive monster of Chisaki as we took to the sky with one of my kicks as he tried to defeat me and kill me in the air. But like all things, he wasn't able to do so as I was able to let out one of my most powerful strikes to his face, knocking him out and sending him to the street below. It left a crater where he was taken from his monster body as well as back to his human form. As soon as I landed on the ground with Eri, I started to grunt in pain as the rewind was now rewinding my body backwards. As always sensei I screamed in pain. My teacher looked at both me and Eri-chan as I collapsed on the ground in pain while sweating profusely and before Eri could hurt her head on my back I caught her head. Don't worry Eri-chan, I will make sure that you're okay. I say, just as I hear a voice nearby. Alright time to get Izumi-kai and get her to Tamura-kun Himiko called out as I felt her lifting me off the ground. Kicking her away from me, I was already too tired to do much of anything against her, but she was relentless in her attacks to knock me out. I still had Eri-chan on my back as the girl was still asleep at the moment. Soon enough though, I faltered in my steps as I tripped on the crater behind me and as soon as I fell forward, Himiko had landed an elbow to the back of my neck, knocking me out. Well that took longer than I thought, don't worry, Tamura-kun will make sure that you stay safe, Izumi-kai Himiko said, happily. Before anything else, I fell into the black abyss that was my nightmares and dreams as I felt something wrap around me and Eri. The Chaco Pav. Izumi was fighting the villain known as Toga and she was fighting as hard as she could whilst exhausted. I was holding up Eraserhead sensei as he told me to help Izumi and as I ran over to help, Izumi was knocked out by an elbow to the back of the neck. I ran even faster when Himiko started to drag her away talking about Tamura Shigaraki protecting her or something. Just as I was about to save Izumi from Toga-san, a portal appeared, the same as Kurogiri's and right as I was about to grab Izumi's hand, they disappeared without a trace. Izumi I scream as my best friend was kidnapped. Izumi Pav. I was slowly waking up from my sleep when I felt something wrong. I felt around my back and found that Eri-chan wasn't anywhere to be seen and my heart dropped. Did Chisaki manage to wake up and beat me? Did he manage to get Eri-chan again? Where is Eri-chan? I thought to myself. As I drifted into the depths of the portal, I noticed that something was on the other end of the portal, moving towards it, I noticed that I was falling towards it. Shoot 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 I screamed as I fell through the portal with an audible popping sound. I looked back up at the portal, or where it should have been, and I saw that it was gone. I couldn't get back home now. I don't have another quirk to help my descent in the fall that I am in right now. I can worry about Eri-chan later. I can only hope that she is okay right now, and then worry later. As I was falling really fast mind you, I noticed some movement on the ground where I was falling. I hope I don't hurt you when I hit the ground. I said, as I landed on something hard on my back. Creating a large dust cloud in the area, I was extremely hurt and I couldn't move. I was still exhausted from my fight with Overhaul. As I looked around the area with my eyes, I noticed movement from the smoke cloud, thinking it was a villain. I tried to get up only to not be able to feel my body able to move. I guess I am just that tired huh? I asked myself tiredly. Soon I find a cute looking guy with brown hair and amber eyes looking at me in concern as well as confusion. Hey are you alright? He asked and the last thing I can say is Eri-chan. Before passing out. Issei Pav. A few days passed as Issei had gotten the girl from the fountain in the park and brought her to his home. His parents had allowed him to bring her inside their home since they had never seen her before and thought that he was now going to adopt a girl from the streets as his girlfriend, the nerve of them. But Issei was watching over her as she slept on his mother's spare bedroom bed as she tossed and turned in her sleep. Placing my hand over hers I watched as she slowly calmed down in her sleep as her breaths became soft as well as balanced. Moving my hand away from hers, I walked out of the room to find my mother and father looking at me expecting an explanation. So what do you want to know? I asked. How in the world did that girl get hurt like that? Goro asked, concerned. I don't know, but she had those injuries from before landing in the park's fountain. I say to my parents. Alright, do you know her name at least? Mickey asked, worried. No, she only said one word, and that was Eri-chan. I say, as my parents look at me in alarm. Is that her sister, her daughter? Goro asked himself. My parents were now walking back and forth in the room as they were trying to solve this mystery. That was when we all heard a crash coming from upstairs as we all ran into the room to find the girl on the ground looking around in a panic. Hey, why, you're safe, just calm down. I say, as the girl looks at me while seemingly breathing heavily. Where am I? And who are you, she asked, looking around the place. My name is Issei Hyoudou, and these are my parents, I say, as my parents introduce themselves. My name is Goro Hyoudou, man of the house. Dad said. My name is Miki Hyoudou. I am Issei's mom. Mom said, as she looked at the girl. And my name is Izumi Midoriya. The girl introduced herself. Where are you from? Goro asked, concerned. I live in Musatafu, Japan. I was on a raid in a Yakuza base in downtown Musatafu. Izumi said. What do you mean? There is no Musatafu here, we only have Kuo Town, Okinawa, Kyoto, Tokyo, Nagasaki, Hiroshima and Matsuyama. Miki said, staring at Izumi concerned. Wait, there is no city and named Musatafu? Izumi asked, worried. Yeah, we don't have a city or district called that. I say as the girl in front of me looked me in the eyes and asked a singular question. What year is it? She asked, concerned. It's 2016 and we haven't had a third world war yet announced from Trump yet. I say, worried that the girl might have a few screws loose. Does this place have superpowers? She asked, weirdly. No, I would think that would be cool to have one, but nobody has superpowers. Goro said, thinking this girl was plain outright crazy. Issei, I think that she is crazy. My dad whispered to me. I'm in the pastament. Izumi started to mutter to herself. Hey, are you okay? I asked, concerned for her health. Oh sorry, just mutter sometimes. I'm sorry for bothering you in any way. Is there something I can do for whoever saved me yesterday? Izumi asked. Well, would you like to stay here? I asked. Why, you wouldn't mind if I stayed with you? Izumi asked, concerned. Don't worry, our son has been changing himself so that he could get a girlfriend. He even got rid of his porn stash. Goro said, smirking at Issei. Porn stash? What is that? Izumi asked, as everyone present noticed how naive she was. Don't worry about it. Just make sure that you don't become perverted like our son did when he was 6. Miki said, dissing her son. Mom, Issei called out. Izumi looked at Issei with a mirth in her eyes as she smiled sadly at them. She thought that this is what a mother was supposed to be like. So, have any of you seen a little girl who has silverish blue hair with ruby red eyes that are as big as mine? Izumi asked, as everyone looked at her. No, I haven't seen a little girl like that. Maybe we could help you search for her. Issei asked, looking at Izumi. Don't worry, just asking. I think I was brought here with her and I wanted to know if you all saw her. It's fine, it's probably nothing. Izumi said as she looked away and out the window. Eri-chan, please be safe. I don't want to lose you as well, especially since you are the only one who looked at me like I was a hero. Izumi thinks to herself. Meanwhile, over near the old school building of Kuo Academy, a red-headed princess of devils looked at a little girl with a horn on her head. What's your name, little one? She asked, nearly celebrating about having a little girl near her. And my name is Ieri. The girl said, looking scared. Don't worry, Eri-chan, Ria's 1E-san will protect you from everyone, Ria said, smiling at the girl. Ria then took the little girl to her room to give her a hug as well as a bath in order to make sure that she was prepared for this world. All with only one thought in the redhead's mind. Where did she get that horn from? Kuo Academy. Izumi goes to school with Issei. Alright, Izumi, you will need to go to a school. What grade were you in from the world you came from? Issei asked her. I was about to hit my 2nd year. Although I am 16. Izumi said as she got on the female Kuo Academy uniform. Alright, when you enter the school I want you to keep an eye on your back since you will need to be able to be aware that most of the school is filled with men that will wish to do things to you. Issei said as he stood in front of her. Wouldn't you fall into the same category? Izumi asked innocently. Nope, I will not do any of that since you are new. It's kind of a code between me and a couple other guys, just make sure that you don't get invited to one of their gatherings. It won't be a good thing. Issei said as Izumi stood in front of him. Oh okay, how do I look? Izumi asked, leaving her room to look at Issei. Issei looked at Izumi in the Kuo Academy uniform and he could only think of one word that came to his mind. Beautiful. He said, aloud. Izumi blushed at his comment as she smacked him upside the head as she ran off to the kitchen. "Ow, what the hell," he called out, running after her. Izumi and Issei were walking to the school when two boys walked over to them. "Hey Issei, I know that you wanted us to not be friends anymore, but could we just be acquaintances?" a bold boy asked. "Sure, just make sure that you don't go after Izumi, she's new to the place," Issei said. As the boy looked at him before smirking. "I got you buddy, I will steer clear of her. I will tell Motohama to do the same," the boy said, running off. "What was that about?" Izumi asked, looking at Issei. "Don't worry, he was one of the perverted trio, well duo now," Issei said, looking at the sky. "Who was the third?" Izumi asked, as Issei blushed and pointed at himself. "Oh okay, well not the worst thing I've ever heard," Izumi said, mumbling. Issei was walking next to her as she continued to mumble around the school as he showed her around. He smiled as she looked absolutely adorable when she mumbled like that. When he gained that thought, he looked away from her as he brought her to her next class, which ironically was the same as his. Sitting down in his desk, Issei waited for the teacher to tell the class about the new student. "Alright class, I know that you want the class to start, but we will be having a new student entering the school today. She was also in fact entering the school with Hyoudou-kun today as well. You can enter now," the teacher said as the girl entered the classroom. When Izumi entered the classroom, she looked at the class as they were cheering that another girl was there as she went up to the chalkboard and wrote her name. "Hi, my name is Izumi Midoriya. And nice to meet you." Izumi bowed as she didn't realize that her shirt had lowered a small bit to show some cleavage to the class. And "Protect this little maiden," they all screamed as Izumi had become embarrassed. "Alright Midoriya-chan, you can sit next to Hyoudou-kun since the seat next to him is the only free seat," the teacher said as Izumi walked over to the seat. Once she was near Issei, she smiled at him before becoming really worked up and looked at the front of the class blushing. Reason. Issei was smirking at her as he showed her an image of her stuttering during her introduction speech. Needless to say, Izumi was extremely embarrassed at that as she focused on her class teachings. It was time for lunch as Izumi and Issei walked to the cafeteria and ordered some food from the lunch lady. Once getting their food, they moved around the building to the outside and sat underneath a cherry blossom tree. They ate there in silence as Izumi looked at Issei and asked him a singular question. "Have you ever worked out, Hyoudou-san?" Izumi asked. "I did a little bit in middle school. But after I became a pervert, I stopped training. But if you want me to, I will train with you in the mornings," Issei said, looking at the girl. "Sure thing, I wanted a training partner for a while. One for all hasn't been able to contact me for a while," Izumi said. "Well, if it's that hard for you to find, then try feeling for the power you once felt. I know that this is a bit weird for me, especially since you came from a world where superheroes are a thing, but maybe it's something like that," Issei said as Izumi nodded her head, saying that she will do it at home. Although from a window up above them, a red-haired mistress looked at them fondly, mainly Issei as she never saw Izumi before at the school. "Akeno, who are those two?" she asked. "The two people underneath your window?" Akeno asked. "Yes," the woman said. "Those two are the second years Issei Hyoudou and Izumi Midoriya. One has been here since the previous year and the other randomly appeared here. Although if you misread the girl's name, it could be read as either Takeru or Deku," Akeno said, staring at her master. "Wait, did you say Deku?" a young voice asked, concerned. "Yes, Eri." "Why?" the red-haired woman asked. Izumi and Issei were leaving their final class of the day in order to head home for the day. Izumi was slowly getting used to the small town as she had grown to like it so much. As they were walking down the street, Izumi noticed some movement behind them as she pulled Issei to their home in order to not have the person find them. She didn't know why, but she didn't like the presence. "Izumi, are you okay? You really pulled me back to the house really fast," Issei said, worried. "It's just my heroic instincts. I felt someone who wanted to do evil things to us and I wanted to get you home as fast as possible," Izumi said, looking away as she felt his hand squeeze hers. "Well, thank you for the help, but I can handle myself," he said as he ruffled her hair. She looked at him with a deadpan expression on her face before he moved back and looked away. "Okay, won't do that again," Issei said as Izumi looked away, mumbling. "I didn't want you to stop," she said as Issei heard it. So reaching back over her head, he started to rub it more as she leaned into the touch a bit. "Well, you seem touch-starved, what happened in your world to make you that way?" Issei asked. "My mom died when I was 4 and my best friend at the time had become my worst bully. I was forced to live under the same roof as him as well, which didn't really help anything, and the worst part was that he did that all in the name of love, which in my personal opinion was bullshit. He just hated me. Showed me that when we were in high school by cheating on me with my best friend Ichako Uraka. My friend didn't betray me, but she was raped by him as a showing that he didn't like me," Izumi said as she sat on Issei's bed. "Well, I will have you know that even though I am not a pervert, I am hoping to have a harem. And even though that all I seek is the love from some women, if you wanted to be a part of the harem, I would make sure that I would never betray you like your childhood friend turned bully. Issei said, smiling at Izumi. You should get some sleep, Baka. Izumi said, as tears were in her eyes as she held them back and heading to her room. As soon as she left, Issei stared at her retreating form with wonder, as seemingly her hips swayed enough that his eyes were stuck on them the entire time before she disappeared. "Aw, our son has a crush on the new girl in town," Goro and Miki called out, as Issei blushed profusely. "What the hell are you talking about?" Issei yelled, running off to his room. "I can't wait for grandbabies," Miki called out, as Izumi heard from her room, as she blushed. "Mom, I really miss you so much. I need your guidance," Izumi said to herself as she laid on her bed. It was late into the night as the entire house was asleep and Issei was the only one awake at the moment. He was about to go to sleep after doing some late-night homework that needed to be done when he heard a knock on his bedroom door. "Come in," Issei said, whispering. When it opened, he found Izumi standing there with her pillow in her hands as she sat on his bed, as she asked him a question. "CC, can I sleep in your bed? I had a nightmare about my world," Izumi said, sadly. "Sure thing, you want me to sleep on the bed as well or on the floor?" Issei asked. "Why, you can sleep next to me," Izumi said, rubbing her eyes and blushing. "Well, I was about to head to sleep as well, so get on the bed and I will finish my homework," Issei said, as Izumi nodded and laid on his bed. As she went under his covers, Izumi smelled something in his blankets as it went up and into her nostrils. Taking a deep breath of the smell, Izumi's eyes for some reason had become slits. She didn't know why, but she felt her eyes become weirdly sharp as she could see most things a lot clearly. What she didn't know was that when she was brought to this world via Kurogiri's teleportation quirk, she had met Great Red, and while she was unconscious, he gave her enough of his blood to become a dragon. So as Issei finished his homework and laid next to Izumi, she didn't know why, but her breath was heavy as well as she was looking at Issei with a weird kind of feeling. But for some reason, Issei thought nothing of it as he wrapped his arms around her body as she felt oddly safe. And she melted into the hug as she leaned back into his chest, not even realizing her ass was on his crotch and making him feel really good. If Issei's mother got up the next morning to see Izumi sleeping on top of her son, she wouldn't tell a soul as Izumi was sleeping on top of him, as if Issei was her husband and was still clothed. "Kids, they sure make their relationships fast," Miki said, closing the door. Reunion with Eri-chan. Izumi was walking towards the school with Issei on the third week that she had been going to said school. She noticed over the last few weeks that someone was spying on them based on her instincts over the amount of time in her old world where she had constantly watched her back growing up and never not trusted her gut. It was her mission to find Eri-chan as the little girl had been lost, and Izumi made sure to tell Eri-chan before anything else happened that she would protect her. She and Issei had been getting closer over the last few weeks, and Izumi didn't know why she was reacting this way to the boy who saved her life. "Was this how your Rocket-chan felt when she asked me to be her girlfriend?" Izumi thought to herself as she walked towards her PE class. After changing into her gym uniform, she had teamed up with Issei many times for the activities that their class had to undergo. Today though, they were doing a special exercise that had the partners teaming up to do trust exercises, in which one might fall with their male counterpart and trust them to catch them, as well as make sure that they are alright. But the activity after that truly made her blush at the implications. She was to do a running race with her partner, as their legs were tied together as they needed to work together in order to win. She had already had enough stamina due to her training to becoming a heroine, but Issei really needed the stamina training when their teacher stated that they needed to train their bodies for this test, and Izumi took to it like a lion hunting its prey and made Issei do it. So when it came to be their turn on the run, Issei and Izumi with all their training had managed to come in at least second place, had another team not pushed them down and forced them to be in a compromising position. As the girls of the school berated Issei for what happened, Izumi stuck up for him, stating that the other team, a group of girls and guys who were jealous of Izumi and Issei's relationship, knocked them over and stopped Issei from getting more bad blood with the denizens of the school. It wasn't until the near end of the day that Izumi felt a presence near her and Issei that wasn't asking for malicious intent, but a loving intent. And as she turned around to see who it was, her eyes widened as she noticed a very noticeable horn on the girl's head, as she was just a bit taller than Izumi herself. "Deku-chan," the girl called out, jumping and hugging Izumi tightly. What?" Izumi choked out as the girl jumped back. Sorry, but don't you remember me? I'm Eri," the girl now known as Eri-chan called out. "Eri-chan?" Izumi asked, tears coming out. "Yup, I was sent back here with you. I am so glad that you're alright," Eri called out as Izumi busted out into tears as she hugged Eri close to her. I thought that why you were lost forever," Izumi cried as she hugged Eri. As Eri began to cry as well, a small group of people showed up announcing their presence. "Well, you are the one," she called Deku-chan. "I never knew that you'd be a hero to her." A woman with red hair and teal-colored eyes said, smirking. Who are you? Izumi demanded as she put Eri and Issei behind herself. Unknown to her, Issei and Eri, Izumi's eyes began to turn into slits similar to that of either a cat's or a dragon's. And the look of her as well as her growing power forming behind her as several spirits showed up behind Izumi made for quite the intimidation display. Although she thought nobody would see the spirits, everyone did as they saw multiple people wearing hero suits staring down at them with a cautious vibe from them. Izumi, who are they? Issei asked, concerned as Izumi blushed as she hid her aura. Don't ask right now, I will tell you about it later. Now you, what happened to you? I thought you were supposed to be 7 years old, Izumi said, looking at Eri, completely ignoring the red-haired girl. Oh, I was placed back before. What year is it? Eri asked the red-haired girl. 2016. Issei said, as Eri nodded at him. I came here a few years before you, so about 8 years ago, Eri said as Izumi stared at her in shock. Do you at least know how to smile? Izumi asked, worried. Yup, Eri said, smiling. Izumi began to let out tears before the red-haired girl started to get annoyed at not being the center of attention and interrupted the moment. I'm sorry for interrupting the moment, but can you please tell me what the hell I just witnessed? The girl said. Well, Issei was about to start before Izumi placed her hand over the boy's mouth. Talk later, when there isn't as many prying eyes as possible. Izumi said, taking both Eri and Issei away from the area. Well, that could have gone better. A black-haired woman said, smirking happily. Akeno, we still don't know who she is. I need to have her in my peerage as well as Issei. From what I am sensing, it could be that we were sensing the draconic aura of Izumi that was placing itself over Issei, kind of like her marking her territory. The red-haired girl said. You're just jealous, Rias. Akeno said. I'm not. Rias called out, as both entered a battle of magic. Why are we at Issei-san's house? I live with the president of the occult research club. Eri said, not amused. I don't want you too near either of them. Izumi said, staring out the window thinking that they're safe. What are you talking about? Ria's 1E-san was nice to me, Eri said. Did she ask you to do anything for her when she saved you? Izumi asked, concerned. Yeah, she asked me to join her peerage. Is that a bad thing? Eri asked. Peerage? What's that? Izumi and Issei asked at the same time. Well, a peerage is a group of devils that are kind of like a chessboard. Rias is the king, Akeno-san is the queen, Kaneko-chan is the rook, and Kiba was the knight. Oh, I am the bishop, Eri said, as Izumi looked in horror. And no, did they corrupt your mind with naughty thoughts? Eri-chan, Izumi asked, now extremely worried. What thoughts? Eri asked. Okay, thank Satan that they didn't take away your pureness, Izumi said, sighing in relief. What do you mean by that? Eri asked, concerned. Eri-chan, devils are the incarnations of the 7 deadly sins. There is greed, sloth, wrath, envy, gluttony, lust, and finally pride. Each of the demons in hell personify any of those traits, and most of them just want to have, Izumi said, as her face was reddening as she tried to finish her sentence. Basically, Eri-chan, some devils in hell just want to have hex every day until the end of time. Issei said, smirking at a deflating Izumi as she started to cry. If you're worried about that, then I haven't even met one that was similar to that. The only one that I think is even close to that is Hikage Astareth, but even then, she has men that she bucks on a daily basis. She doesn't even go after women. Eri said. Okay, Eri-chan, I believe you. But you will tell me if you find someone who tries anything against you that you don't want, right? Izumi asked. Yes, I will. I haven't met anyone who has the feeling of doing what you mentioned yet. But I will inform you about it. Eri said, smiling sadly. Alright, why did Rias want to talk to us? Izumi asked, then getting to the point. Rias was looking for prospects for her peerage. She really needs some strong pieces for her upcoming fight with Riser-san. He is a real pervert and he really only wants Rias 1E-san as a trophy for those around him for him to lord around. Eri said, as Izumi stared at her in shock. She hasn't thought about training herself to get strong enough to defend her own honor. Izumi asked incredulously. No, from what I think she seems to think that she can defeat him with her power alone, as well as strong pieces that will help her. Eri said, looking at Izumi and Issei. If she wanted some help, she should learn to save herself. But me and Issei will not be joining her peerage. I want myself and Issei to be human and not be a part of the supernatural world. Izumi said, as Issei looked at her smiling. I have to keep myself human for one of my childhood friends. One was with the church, she had been by my side as a kid and I don't remember the other one. Issei said, looking to Eri. Well, there is that plan done and dealt with. I don't have to see Rias do anything bad to force them now. Eri thought to herself as she remembered her talk with Rias. Eri-chan, I need you to talk to Izumi and Issei and try to get them to become my servants in order for me to have enough pieces to save myself from my marriage. Rias said, looking to Eri. What happens if they decline? Eri asked, worriedly. Don't worry, I will make sure that nothing happens to them since they are within my territory. Ria said, smiling. Iri got up from her seat as Izumi looked at her. I will be heading home now, I hope you both have a good night, Deku-san. See you at school tomorrow. Iri said, leaving the room. As soon as Iri left the room, Izumi looked over at Issei as he stared at her in shock, as well as a shocked smile on his face. I never knew that you could take the initiative like that. He said, smirking. Shut up, Izumi said, punching his shoulder. Ow, he cried out, falling to the ground. Sorry, Izumi said, fretting over Issei's injury. Not far from their location, a winged woman stared at the scene with anger as well as jealousy. I wanted to kill him myself, but if she insists on being in my way, I might as well as kill them both. The woman said, angrily before flying off. Yuuma Amano. Issei was walking around the school as he watched some of the women look at him a little bit as he was walking with Izumi. He had noticed that both he and she had been getting glares from the opposing hex from time to time as he was getting closer to Izumi herself. He was actually thinking that he could get her to join in on his harem idea if she actually stopped getting flushed to the point she would pass out. But now that they were all alone, Issei was sitting next to Izumi as she was allowing him to lay on her lap as he looked up at her face, although his perverted mind had made the announcement that her breasts were in the way of her cute face that had adorable freckles marring her face. So, what are you thinking about? Izumi asked as she played with Issei's hair. You. He said as Izumi blushed. What about me? She asked, curiously blushing. Well, if you could calm down your mind, I was hoping if you'd be alright to join my harem that I want to make. Issei said as Izumi turned even more red and mumbled something. What did you say? He asked as he melted in her touch. I said, maybe. Izumi said as she looked away, still messing with his hair. Well, if you want to be a part of my harem, you'd be the first one personally, and all the other girls would have to get past you in order to join. If anything, you'd be in charge of who joins. Issei said as Izumi stared at him in shock. Why, you'd actually give me the right to oversee who joins the harem? She asked, confused. Yup, you are the first girl I ever fell in love with, and to be honest, your breasts are really big. He said as Izumi playfully smacked his head. God, you don't have to be so blunt. I never really thought much about my breasts though. Nobody ever told me about them as well as pointed them out except a perverted classmate from my world. I was extremely disgusted with him since he tried to touch them at every opportune moment he could. Izumi said, shivering. Well, at least I am more tolerable than him, right? Issei asked as Izumi laughed a little, messing with his hair. You sure are a hell of a lot more tolerable than him. I don't know how I came to fall in love with you within literally a month of me being in this world, Izumi said as she smiled at Issei. I won't hide my feelings anymore. I fell in love with Kaken in my world, but he rudely told me to leave him alone as I fell into depression. But with Issei, he's been giving me the attention I've always wanted from Kaken. Izumi thought to herself. Hey Issei? Izumi asked as Issei looked into her eyes and not her breasts this time. Yeah? He asked. Do you think I could be your first GG girlfriend? Izumi asked curiously whilst she blushed madly. Sure, I never had a girlfriend before as well, so this would be new grounds for us, Issei said with a happy smile. But before he could even continue his speech for Izumi, she had closed the distance between them as she kissed him on the lips and causing his brain to malfunction for a few seconds. Izumi and Issei were walking home that day as they were happy to reveal their relationship to the rest of the school as they were furious. It was when they were walking past a small bridge standing over the small river in Kuo that they noticed that someone was walking behind them and called out their names. Are you Issei Hyoudou? The girl asked as they both turned around. Yes, I am Issei Hyoudou. He said as he started to hear a menacing voice in his head. Partner, that is a fallen angel. Tread carefully. A masculine voice called out in his head. Good, are you seeing anyone? She asked. Yeah, in fact I'm seeing Izumi here right now, we were about to go out on a date later on today. Issei said, not hiding the fact that he saw Izumi blush as well as look incredibly territorial against this woman. Oh, well, could I go out with you on Sunday? She asked as Issei got a little more suspicious with Izumi standing next to him feeling the same way. Sure thing, but can I have your name first? I don't know you personally. Issei said as Izumi nodded her head as she felt Issei's arm wrap around her waist. Oh, sorry about that, my name is Yuuma Amano. Nice to meet you, I will see you on Sunday, Issei Yuuma said, running off. That was dangerous, Ice. Why are you allowing her to get that close to you? Izumi asked, concerned. What did you sense from her? Issei asked as they continued their walk home, no longer feeling the need to go out on a date tonight. All I had felt from her was the huge amount of malicious intent against you, Ice. I have a feeling that she might try and kill you at the end of your date. Heaven's evening gaze. Sounds suspicious of a name to me. Izumi said as she just reminded Issei why he fell in love with her as she continued to mumble out her theories. This is why I love you so much, Izumi. Issei said, smirking at the girl as she sputtered out apologies for her rambling. Sorry about that, but can you tell me what that voice was? Izumi asked, looking at him. What voice are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. Issei asked, concerned. I know you heard that very masculine voice eyes, he sounded like he was telling you to be careful around that girl. I think he called her a fallen angel. Izumi asked, confused. Wait, you actually heard that? Issei asked, incredulously. Yes, I heard it. I think it's because of this new feeling I get around you, the feeling of wanting to protect you from harm. Izumi said, as she sat down on Issei's bed as they continued to talk. And you'd be right about that, you discount Drake, the same voice called out. Drake, what are you talking about? Izumi asked, confused. This will be a lot easier then, when you entered this world, what was the first thing you saw? The voice called out again as a weird orb that was jade green showed up on Issei's left hand. When I first arrived here I remember seeing a vast area of nothing, but it was filled with many colors. It was like space, but it felt like it was millions of times bigger than it, and it felt like it was crushing my body from every direction possible. Izumi said, mumbling. Then there was no other reason for what I am about to tell you both. Izumi Midoriya was transformed into a dragon by Great Red. The voice called out once more. Who's Great Red? Issei asked, confusedly at his left hand. Great Red is the most powerful being in the known world, possibly even the universe. The only thing that is on par with his amount of power and knowledge is Trihexa, but that monster was sealed away by God of the Bible. Other than that, your girlfriend is a dragon, Issei Hyoudou. The voice called out. I'm a literal dragon. How come I don't turn into a literal dragon in the sense of the word? Izumi asked, concerned. That is because you don't know how to do that yet. Give it some time, and I will assist you both in how to become the proper dragons you will soon become. Issei Hyoudou, you have been doing well to awaken me at this point and managed to get me to talk to you. You seem to be quite the prodigy for me to have the host of. Congratulations, you might survive a night with that fallen angel. The draconic voice called out. What is your name? We can't keep thinking about you being Dragon-san. Izumi asked, concerned. I am the Welsh Dragon of Domination Drake Y Gotch, and I am the Heavenly Dragon of Domination, the now named Drake called out. Well, I can at least get used to your voice. It sounds almost like All Might's. Izumi said, chuckling. I don't know who this All Might guy is, but he sounds like a really good guy. Issei said, smirking. Don't get ahead of yourselves just yet. The one who is more powerful in this entire area is by far Izumi Midoriya, since she has the training of being a heroine in a different world, her amount of power she accumulated there had been transferred to the new body she has now. And the amount she wields is on par with a high-tier dragon, or in other words, almost ultimate class and strength for devils. Drake said, as Izumi blanched the power she wields. Well, my date with Yuuma Amano is tomorrow, should we prepare for something, Drake? Issei asked. Glad to know that you are asking for my opinion, partner, but overall, your strength should be at least on par with that Fullen's power. Should you train early in the morning, you should be just a tad bit stronger than her. It would be a close fight should you two come to arms, and I am sure that your girlfriend would come to your rescue should you get fatally wounded. Drake called out as Izumi nodded her head. Let's get this started then, Issei said, smirking at Izumi, who did the same. I think I might like these two. Drake thought to himself. Issei was standing in the middle of the sidewalk as he waited for Yuuma to arrive, and when he got a paper from a bat lady, he was suspicious about that. Partner, that is a devil's sigil. It seems closer to that of the Gremory household. Tread carefully next time you see her. Drake warned. Issei had heard something from his ear as it was the earpiece that Izumi gave him whenever she needed to talk to him. I personally think that Ria's Gremory is the owner of that bad lady. She is probably trying to make sure that you die so she can turn you into one of her servants. I am waiting at Kuo Park for when your date ends. Izumi said, smirking on her end of the line. Well, let's get this started. Yuuma is making her way over to me. She's wearing something that will bring out her hex appeal. Issei mused as Drake entered. She is relying on information about how you act around your school. Completely trying to humiliate you in front of your last moments. I already don't like this woman. Drake said in Issei's mind. As for the duo on a date, the date around town was perfect as Issei was making his decisions based on how Izumi told him how to react on an actual date. It was actually fun for the boy as he had gotten Yuuma a gift out of the kindness of his heart. So when Yuuma had pulled away from his hand and stood in front of him getting ready to obviously ask a question, he readied himself for a fight. Issei, could I ask you something? To commemorate our date? Yuuma asked. As Izumi was in the background waiting for the fight to start. Sure, what is it? Issei asked, slowly backing off from her. And then she was in his face as she asked him literally to his face. Would you die for me? Yuuma asked, as Issei was really confused. That was how she was going to end the date. If I was an idiot I would have been more concerned about that. Issei thought to himself. I'm sorry, what did you say? I'm afraid I didn't hear that correctly. Issei asked, acting confused. He was slowly increasing his power to beyond, Yuuma called out as she transformed into a taller woman who was way more mature than Yuuma ever was, as her eyes became sharp and her body was replaced with spandex BDSM clothing. Seriously, if I didn't already have a girlfriend, I would have an erection right now, Issei blurted out. Yuuma stared at him incredulously as she was surprised that he wasn't even scared at the moment. Why aren't you scared? You're a human, right? You are beneath me in terms of power, Yuuma called out, attacking Issei with a red light spear. Issei managed to dodge the attack as he threw a punch of his own, activating his power that he heard from Drake was called a sacred gear. And it was already in its second evolution. What the boosted gear? I really need to kill you now, the woman called out, in slight fear. What is your real name? I haven't gotten that at least. Issei mocked as he kicked her away. My name is Raynare, brat, and I am more powerful than you are, she called out, launching red spears of light at him sporadically. Issei was dodging each and every spear as he got closer to the woman as he landed a powerful right hook on her left cheek before kicking the woman out of the air and into the ground. As she groaned in pain on the ground, Raynare watched as Issei walked over to her as he charged a boosted blast in his hand in her direction as he started to monologue. You know, had you not had malicious intent, I would have thought you'd be a great girlfriend. But you just had to go and buck it up. If you managed to kill me, I would have been so afraid of women and them rejecting me that I would have become even more dense to women who did really care for me. Issei said as he released his power just as Raynare released on final spear of light into his gut. But as both attacks hit the other, the spear of light passed through his blast and punctured him through the stomach as he coughed up blood, but his blast still killed Raynare. With him having more stamina than he had before, Issei was able to still stand as he held his gut as it started to come out with more blood by the second. Izumi had been running towards him as she had finally destroyed the barrier that Yuuma had made, since Izumi didn't know what to do with the said barrier. Now that she could see Issei, she was now extremely worried about him as she ran up to him and started to follow Drake's instructions to save Issei. Teleporting them back to his home, Izumi had begun to use Drake's power in order to transform Issei into a dragon, as she used some of her power as well to hasten the process. As Issei's amber eyes slowly became slitted, he noticed how the boosted gear stayed on his hand as Izumi was healing him. But that wasn't the thing going through his mind at that moment as he watched Izumi's eyes very focused on his healing as he quirked a smirk on his face as he slowly brought his hand towards her ass in order to cop a feel before passing out. From Izumi's perspective, when she saw Issei smirk evilly at her, she didn't know what that was for until she felt a hand cop a feel on her rear, causing her face to become red as she surprisingly let out a moan, confusing both Issei and Drake to stop all their healing for a moment on the boy. What was that? Issei asked, blushing at how hot it sounded. I agree with my partner, what the hell was that, Midoriya? Drake asked, concerned. Izumi's face was now as red as a strawberry as she made a great impression of one as she poked her fingers together as she spoke her reason. It surprised me when he did that, also I kind of liked it. Izumi mumbled as Issei and Drake could only think of one thing. Are you a masochist? They both screamed. Izumi blushed even more at that. Dealing with the Gremory Pirigiri-chan is a pervert. No. Izumi woke up on Issei's bed as she felt him unconsciously holding her close to his chest. She was blushing as she felt one of his hands on her chest as she slowly got out of bed. Moving to the shower inside the house, she started hers as she washed her body and moved to her other body parts. It was here that she noticed something terribly wrong with her body at the moment. She was extremely sensitive as well as noticed that her breasts were swelled up and bigger than they usually are. So she consulted the vestiges of One for All in order to find out what happened, and even they had no idea of what was wrong with her body. Not only that, but she felt herself wanting a need for something. She didn't know what it was she needed, but she had no idea that she would get her answer later on that morning when Issei walked out of his bedroom. When Issei left his bedroom, as soon as he saw her in a towel covering her enlarged chest, as well as her cleavage showing him all to be revealed, he stepped closer to her as she was essentially pinned to the wall behind her as he leaned over her body as he sniffed her as if he was still unconscious. Feeling his hot breath over her body, she shivered as he reached his hands over her waist as he pulled her into his chest, as for some reason she melted into his touch. That was when she felt his hands brush against her ass as she felt him slightly cop a feel of them as he pulled them apart. She didn't forget that he mumbled under his breath about now not being the right time for what he was about to do. Leaving for the shower, Issei entered the bathroom to take one as Izumi walked to her bedroom to change and get ready for the day. As soon as she closed the door, she found herself slumping to the floor as she breathed heavily, as if she didn't know what the hell was going on. She had plans for today, such as consulting the Gremory Peerage for what they planned on doing earlier that week with the slip of a devil's sigil. Izumi knew about the supernatural because of the fact that her quirk, One for All, had told her about the supernatural world here. Not only was the fact that every single faction of this world was based on mythology, but it was also real in this world, and she didn't know how to handle that. So she changed her clothes and waited in the kitchen with Issei's mother, helping her to make breakfast with her, as Issei changed getting ready for school upstairs. Eventually Issei made his way downstairs as he ate breakfast with everyone present, but Izumi was noticing his behavior was very different from usual. He was touchier as well as hugged her more often as if he was needing her help with something. She wasn't one to turn down pleas of help, and she helped him walk to school. It all came to a head when they arrived at the school when she literally felt him growl at the other boys whenever they looked at her direction. It was here that her quirk gave her the information that she needed since they were researching the world around them. Apparently since turning Issei into a dragon was what needed to save his life, he was undergoing a heat period where a male dragon undergoes a period of time where his sexual activities are extremely heightened. She really didn't know how her heat was going to go, since she already knew that based on what is happening, her body is looking for a mate at the moment and she really didn't want to do this now. Classes were unbearable since she was sitting next to Issei as they both tuned out their teachers as their instincts were trying to take over their minds and turn them into breeding dragons who only knew how to procreate. It was simply hilarious when they entered the changing room where both characters had been breathing heavily as they looked in the same direction of the other through the wall for the other gender they were with. Soon enough they entered the gym where their training for physical activity was pushing them to their utmost limits as Issei and Izumi worked together through everything. But they kept their minds in the right place since they had a lot of discussions to make with the Gremory peerage to make since this is their territory with Sonas that they have to make sure nobody is attacked. The simple fact that the Gremory peerage knew about Issei about to be attacked showed that they were waiting for both of them to die in order to turn them to the side of the devils without any kind of resistance. So during lunch Issei and Izumi walked over to the Orc Occult Research Clubroom to meet Rias and her peerage. Izumi literally broke down the door in order to look at the surprised faces around them. Izumi Ice, what are you guys doing here?" she called out, jumping from her chair. As Izumi looked around the room, she found Eri looking at her with a weird expression on her face. "Eri-chan, can you have your allies leave the room while I and Issei talk to Rias?" Izumi asked as Eri nodded her head seeing where this was going. Once Akeno, Kiba and Kaneko were out of the room, Eri looked back at Izumi and Issei one more time before leaving as she overheard Izumi begin to speak. "Rias, how many times do I have to tell you that me and Issei will not join your peerage?" Izumi said as Rias rebutted. "I told you before I needed people to help me with my problems and that to do that, I need powerful pieces," Rias said, looking concerned for the look Issei was giving Izumi. "I told you Rias that me and Issei aren't looking to work for the devils, we just want to live out our lives without the threat of some prissy bitch trying to force us into her peerage," Izumi said angrily. As Issei watched as Izumi yelled at Rias and the devil woman yelled back, he heard Drake laughing at the situation in front of himself as he had no clue what to add to the conversation. "Partner, I can't believe that you got a literal dragoness to stand up for you, she will be your mate at the end of the day, I can feel it," Drake said, laughing his ass off. "Drake, why is Izumi defending me? I have no idea what the hell is even going on. Why do I feel like I need to be extremely close to her though?" Issei asked his partner in confusion. "You're undergoing the heat stage of a dragon, where you are wishing to mate with anything you want without repercussions. I am simply surprised that you lasted this long without jumping Izumi's bones already," Drake said, smirking within the sacred gear. "Drake, I have been literally forcing my instincts to listen to reason this entire time. Please don't make this harder than it already is at the moment," Issei thought as he unconsciously placed a hand over Izumi's back, stifling a shiver from the girl. Rias noticed Izumi's shiver when Issei placed his hand over her back as he looked at her with love and for some reason lust. When looking over Izumi's eyes they weren't any different, except it was as if she was waiting for him to pounce on her if anything. "Rias, I will say this only one time. You will stay away from my Issei and you will leave both of us alone for the remainder of your life." "Got it?" Izumi demanded. "And why are you saying that he is yours?" Rias said, looking at her. "Because since you haven't realized it yet, before you even came here this territory was Issei's to begin with. He is a literal dragon and your people just came in and took it over without asking him first. He was literally here first and you didn't even think about seeing if there were traces of draconic presences first," Izumi said before leading Issei away. As they were about to leave the room, Izumi heard a comment from Eri-chan as she opened the door. "Hey, it's not my fault that the guy's penis is making me a little horny at the moment," Eri yelled at Kaneko as they both heard the door open. When both girls looked at Izumi, they found her looking at Eri with betrayal and failure. "Deku-san. I can explain," Eri said as she tried to move closer to Izumi. "No, Eri-chan is a pervert, I failed you mom," Izumi screamed out to the heavens. Everyone around her looked at her in alarm as Izumi started to cry hopelessly as Issei just decided to buck his logic and just picked her up and walked away from Eri at the moment. "Please, I'm sorry. Eri called out as Issei replied back to her. Just let her cry it off, she will be fine by next week. Issei said, disappearing around the corner. Meanwhile inside the room where Riaz was looking stunned at the crying Izumi, she decided to look over all of Kuo town for traces of draconic scents as well as presences, as she felt one that had been there for years, since before she and Sona ever came there to take over the place. And she right then and there knew that Izumi was correct in her assumptions. Izumi was being held in the strong arms of Issei as she cried whilst being curled up in a small ball. She didn't realize that she was being held until she was placed softly on Issei's bed as she looked around and found Issei taking off his shirt as he sat down next to her. "Issei, do you think I would be a good mother?" Izumi asked, out of the blue. "I don't know. You seem like a good older sister to me," Issei said, looking at Izumi. "Well, my mother told me that in order to be a good mother, you need to protect your child without failure. And I feel like I failed Eri-chan since she is now pervert," Izumi said as she looked into Issei's eyes. As Issei looked into Izumi's eyes, they found themselves locked into the eyes of the other as Izumi and Issei slowly moved closer to the other's face. As soon as Issei placed his forehead over Izumi's, he spoke to her in a reassuring tone for her to calm down a little. "She will be fine, being a little perverted never hurt anyone. Besides, she is 15 years old right now, she is listening to her hormones anyway," Issei said, smiling into her eyes. Izumi looked at him closely as she nodded her head as for some reason Izumi leaned further into his hug as she laid her chest over his and had her face in his upper torso as she breathed heavily over him. It was here that Izumi looked up and as Issei looked down towards her, they moved closer as Issei initiated the first kiss of both of them. It was as if electricity entered both their bodies as they became more and more passionate. For Izumi, her body was melting into the kiss as she placed her hands on his shoulders as she leaned backwards as she had him on top of her as they continued. Both of them never heard the door open as Miki looked at the duo kissing on the bed as she smiled before leaving the room and telling Goru to head to the mall with her. Lemon skipped, please read it on website. The next morning, Miki would look into the room and find Issei and Izumi sleeping with Izumi being the little spoon while Issei wrapped himself all around her protectively. But there was the stench of Hex in the room as she smiled at her son as she left the room in order to get some Febreze spray for them to make sure his room doesn't smell like Hex and hum. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.